So kind of going back to where we are now, first thing we did at the start of this project was look at what information organizations are currently capturing. None of the things listed here I think will be a surprise to anybody. Assets, literacy, general well-being, how they're paying for their utility bills, their source of income, history of any debt problems, whether or not they're in control, and what referrals they've experienced in the past. But what we found is organizations naturally often look at very specific areas based on what service they're delivering. For example, we had across the board, agencies delivering debt advice work are looking at income maximization, using the common financial statement, looking at what products people are currently using, much more kind of tick boxes, filling in boxes. Other organizations looking at a lot more in-depth information, looking at psychological well-being, mental health. So obviously through this tool, what we're looking to do is see if there's a way you can combine all of this into one sort of standardized measurement tool. A few people at the events we've been running have been asking about existing tools and whether or not we're working in partnership with organizations doing this work. As I already mentioned, the FSA's baseline survey from 2005, absolutely making sure we're linking up where possible, with a number of excellent indicators in there, and kind of why reinvent the wheel if the learning already exists. Following on from that, there's the Money Advice Services Financial Health Check. As I say, we do have the Money Advice Service on our steering group, very much working with them, seeing how we can link up and not wanting to replicate any work that's out there already. Also got the Resolution Foundation's Financial Health Index, which is looking to measure financial health on a much higher level, so financial health of the UK overall. So part of the consultation we've been doing has involved 8 regional consultation events, which I actually just finished last week. These were held in Newcastle, Edinburgh, Belfast, Manchester, Flinders, Dodwells in Mid Wales, Birmingham, London and Exeter. The purposes of these events are really to talk to stakeholders and practitioners on the ground, find out what they're currently doing and what they think is important to measure in this financial well-being measurement tool. So we covered content, what indicators should be included in the tool. A couple of people here today actually attended one in Edinburgh. So we asked people to actually write down what do they want to see included in this tool. We've collected all of that information, and we actually had discussions based on ones they want to talk about in the groups. So through that, we've come up with a number of indicators to take a look at. As I shared with you the FI3D model, we asked stakeholders, practitioners, what they thought about that, what they thought was missing, how it could be improved. And then in the final session, we looked at specific client groups and what we need to be aware of, thinking, potentially this tool needs to differ across client groups, needs to be administered in a different way, needs to measure different things. So just some of the findings from the consultation events. Overall, we had input from over 200 stakeholders and practitioners from around the UK. Sort of representatives from a number of different sectors, the highest being social housing, which isn't really surprising, I don't think. Social housing providers very concerned with measuring the impact of interventions they're giving to their tenants. Obviously a lot of important things there. Tenants' sustainability and income maximization. We had representatives from money and debt advice groups, local government, central government, affordable credit sector, and special interest groups, so groups sort of representing specific client groups and their interests. As I say, we asked participants to come up with indicators they would like to see included in the tool, and we ended up with a bank of over 300 indicators, some of which are shown here. That sounds like quite a lot, but luckily there's a lot of crossover between the events, between the groups. A lot of people coming up with the same things. Already through our analysis, we're finding you're able to group them quite neatly into different areas. So just some of the ones here that were highlighted: health, debt, fuel poverty, broader issues of well-being, future plans and aspirations, goal setting, financial capability, digital inclusion, whether people have access to the internet, how they're using the internet, which, as you know, is going to be more important with changes to the welfare benefit system, potential barriers or triggers in somebody's future we need to be aware of, confidence, what products they're holding, if they're in employment, how sustainable that employment is, their overall attitude towards money, and the business case, again, coming very strongly from the social housing sector as the business case. This money we're investing in financial capability, financial inclusion work, what's the return actually for organizations and for funders? As I said, we talked about different client groups. Around 10 client groups were discussed in depth. These were young people, social housing tenants, as you can imagine, were discussed at each event, mentally disabled, professionals, people in work, how they manage their money, blind, partially sighted, BME groups, older people, drug users, homeless, and groups that are hard to reach. So really thinking about what we need to be aware of when designing this tool and administering this tool. So the feedback from the 8 events and from kind of some of our own research, there's a strong sense that questions may need to differ depending on client group. And out of that, we've decided to set up a panel of experts from representatives from different groups to make sure that these questions are relevant. You know, kind of going back to a very simple example, I designed the evaluations for our team at Tonybee Hall, and we've got a project in our organization working with young people. You don't want to ask young people questions about, you know, how they're paying their rent and bills, because it's not relevant. Kind of going back to the tool, it's going to be the same for some groups not wanting to use certain forms of credit, or just being in different situations, so needing to be sensitive to that. Following on from that, certain client groups may require different formats. For example, learning disabled, a lot of talk about young people, making it interactive, not just sitting them at a computer having them fill it in. Some client groups able to fill it in themselves, some needing face-to-face support to fill it in. And also needing potential to provide different formats depending on the intervention type. You know, what an assessment that will work for a one-to-one, you know, with that person face-to-face might be a bit different if you're in a workshop setting with 20 service users. Another thing that came up is the need to consider value judgments. Making sure that we're not kind of saying everybody has to have these financial products, for example, in order to be considered fully financially included. And kind of following on to that point, the need to place the service user at the heart and measure on where they want to be. So we're not looking with this measurement tool, obviously measurement implies a scoring. We're not looking to score everybody out of 100, as in, you know, you get an A+ in financial well-being and this one has a C. More so, where are they right now with their finances, with their financial management, where would they like to be? And going back to the impact measurement, measuring that change in numerical terms. And again, following on from that point, the point that financial well-being is not static. Just like health, people fall in and out of good financial management, good financial position throughout their life, depending on their circumstances. You know, redundancy, having children, all of that impacts on finances. So being aware of that, it's a process, and really just enabling people to get to where they want to be. So kind of next steps. As you can imagine, from 8 consultation events, we have a huge amount of data now sitting on our desks that we need to analyze. We're doing this analysis in partnership with the National Center for Social Research, looking at what people have told us, grouping it into manageable ways, and from that coming up with a model of this financial well-being model from which the tool will be based. So once you've got that model and a bank of indicators, going to be coming up with actual questions. What questions you need to ask to capture this information. And at that point, we will be engaging funders as well. So far, it's been stakeholders, practitioners, want to engage funders in a roundtable saying, you know, do these indicators resonate with you? Is this what you'd want to see from organizations you're currently funding? Once you've got the questions, we will be doing cognitive interviews with actual service users. As we're all aware, nobody really talks about their finances or thinks about their finances. They think about their money, they think about their income. So really taking this model from sort of high-level strategic language down to something that's meaningful for people actually on the ground. And from then, we will have the actual tool ready to pilot. The reason we are, obviously, well, there's a number of reasons we're doing these pilots. A big one is we definitely envisage it will change a lot through the course of the pilots. Once you kind of release something out into the public and it's actually used, there's a number of changes that come back. So we're actually going to be doing a 2-stage pilot. First one going to be between 2 and 3 months, just because we're envisaging a lot of changes taking place immediately. Going to be reviewing the tool again and then releasing it again for further piloting over about 6 months. We're looking to engage between 35 and 40 organizations across the UK, and we're looking for a variety of organizations. So the way we're going to be selecting these organizations is through an open tender process. Anybody interested in piloting this tool will be invited to send an expression of interest. won't be very long, just to get an idea of how big your organization is, you know, how many staff, how many service users you see, what service users you predominantly deliver services to, and where you work geographically. And once you've got those, we'll be deciding to get the best mix. We want to make sure this tool is workable in a social housing association that has 80,000 tenants down to a credit union that has 20 clients. We want to make sure that these questions are usable and relevant. So if anybody's interested in that, we will be releasing information on how to tender by mid-November. I'll have my email up at the end if you want to get in touch. You can also obviously get it from the event organizers. And if you're not already aware of the Transact websites, transact.org.uk, and that's just quite a handy way to get information on what's going on with the tool. It's free to join if you want to join as a member, but we will be putting the information on the pilots up there as well. So up until this point, it's been a lot of blue sky thinking, which has been great, finding out what people want to see, and now we're at the point where we're actually going to take all that information and see what we can make practically on the ground. So if you'd like to be involved, that would be excellent. Please do get in touch with the pilots or just thoughts on the tool itself. We will be sending out reports on the 8 consultation events we did, information resulting from that. If you'd like a copy, please do get in touch. And thank you very much for your time.
Right, thank you again to both Helen and Elaine. Now is your opportunity to ask any questions that have occurred to you during the course of the presentations. Think about your own practice, think about the challenges that you may come across.